Dean Obeidallah in October. While the Jewish problem currently headlines the Daily Stormer's homepage, the site's publisher sounds suspiciously vexed by Muslims. In the deep archives of the United States premierhate site, Andrew Anglin once wrote that Muslimsuseda special ritual on Halloween to convert unsuspecting trick-or-treaters to Islam. That's not an outlier example. Anglin has described Muslim British children as little sleeper agents brainwashed to seek the kingdom of Allah in the country they now reside when they grow up. He's accused Muslims of plotting terrorist attacks openly on onCNN panels, and his fellow whites of worshipping Muslimsasmasters. Subscribe to the Postmost newsletter. Today's most popular stories on the Washington Post. All of these people who desire on a mostly subconscious level, probably to conquer and subdue us completely, are inside of our base. He wrote on the Stormer in 2015. So what must Anglin think of an extensive effort by non-imaginary Muslims to track down his home address, going so far as to send private investigators to his father's office in Ohio last month? The Muslim advocates aren't trying to convert Anglin to Islam, of course, nor do they wish to enslave him in the Western Caliphate of his published fantasies. They just wanted to sue him for defamation for fabricating a story in which a Muslim American radio host confesses to the Manchester bombing. But as Dean Obeidallah and several other accusers try to bring him to court, the Daily Stormer's leader appears to be in hiding. It's been a rough year for the Stormer, which the Southern Poverty Law Center once called the top hate site in America. Its longtime web host banned the site in August after Anglin wrote an essay attacking a protester killed at a white nationalist rally in Charlottesville as a fat, childless, 32-year-old slut. The Stormer eventually reappeared on a server run by the government of Anguilla. But the same month it went dark. Dean Obeidallah sued Anglin over a recent article that called him the mastermind behind the Manchester bombing. Obeidallah, a comedian who hosts a daily show on SiriusXM radio, has never been accused of anything to do with a terrorist attack that killed nearly 24 people at a concert in England in May. This didn't stop Anglin from filling his article with elaborate fantasies the next month. After being sought for questioning by MI5 in connection to the bombing, Obeidallah caught a flight to Turkey and was smuggled across the border into Syria by the military, Anglin wrote. As evidence, he posted a series of doctor tweets in which Obeidallah not only confessed to plotting the attack, but plugged a non-existent kin appearance discussing how I masterminded the Manchester bombing. Anglin went so far as to invent a radio show in which Obeidallah hung up on angry callers, called them infidel pigs, and threatened, "You're next." An image of the Daily Stormer still online, though the publisher can't be found, as the real Obeidallah laid out in his August lawsuit. The article resulted in a flurry of threats like Adolf Hitler posting a photo of a man aiming a gun toward him, and a commenter who wrote in despair, "There is no point in dialogue with people who hate white people. Dean better pray he dies of natural causes before we get there." Dean is a very well-known Muslim American comedian, said his lawyer Sireen Shabaya, who works for Muslim advocates. That makes him a target. He feels like he has to look over his shoulder. You might expect someone accused of defamation to lawyer up and defend themselves in court. Instead, Anglin posted a follow-up article 2 weeks after Obeidallah sued. "I am being sued by a greasy Islamic terrorist who is now claiming that real tweets that he posted were faked by me," he wrote August 29. He posted yet more fake tweets, and somewhat confusingly wrote that Obeidallah had doctored the originals himself, claiming the comedian possessed a special master's account that gave him special Twitter powers. Meanwhile, Obeidallah's lawyers were having trouble finding the prolific author to serve him notice of the lawsuit, which must be done before the case can proceed. They weren't exactly surprised. Lawyers for a Montana woman who accused Anglin of orchestrating a troll storm against her had by then spent months trying to locate him. The New York Times recounted that effort, in which 4 private investigators scoured Anglin's presumed hometown in Ohio, staked out an associate's apartment, and visited his sister's church, all to no avail. Obeidallah's lawyers have been in touch with their counterparts on the Montana case and knew what they were up against. From my understanding, the people who might know where he is are not helping, Shabaya said. Muslim advocates hired an investigative agency to comb Anglin's background, mining his business records, voter registration, and family history for possible addresses. The investigators came up with about a half-dozen possible homes, all clustered around Worthington, Ohio, and started knocking on doors. Anglin was nowhere to be found. The most promising lead was an office building in Worthington, which Anglin had listed as his home when he registered a company called Moonbase Holdings a few years ago. An investigator scouted it out in September and found no Moonbase. But here were signs for a ministry that Anglin's father is believed to own. The investigator got into the suite a few days later and found a pile of the father's mail on the reception desk. But still no Anglin, just vague rumors from others in the building that the father had moved out. These facts suggest that defendant Anglin's family is complicit in his efforts to evade service, Obeidallah wrote to a federal court Monday. His lawyers have asked a judge to issue a court order that would let them subpoena Anglin's family and associated for clues to his location, so he can actually proceed with this lawsuit. Shabaya said, remaining in hiding is not the right way to deal with this. The Washington Post asked Anglin in an email whether he's hiding and if so, where and why, but so far has heard nothing more from the publisher than the man he called a terrorist. More reading. The rise and humiliating fall of Chris Cantwell, Charlottesville's starring fascist. The story behind the powerful photo of a Czech girl's contempt for neo-Nazis. A Twitter campaign is outing people who marched with white nationalists in Charlottesville.